Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, film number 25 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who was previously known for small dramas such as Short Term 12 or Just Mercy, both of which I highly recommend, and starring Simu Liu, Tony Leung, Awkwafina, Meng'er Zhang, Michelle Yeoh, Florian Munteanu, and Andy Lei. It's the first major superhero film starring an Asian superhero, titular Shang-Chi, and the film also has a predominantly Asian cast. It also features quite a lot of spoken Chinese in the film, apart from just the English. And the short version of the review is that it's pretty damn amazing. I loved it through and through, and I think it's a return to solid form for Marvel after the underwhelming Black Widow, and I'll try to explain why I loved it so much without spoiling anything significant. Story opens with a flashback explaining the backstory of the movie's antagonist, Wen Wu, played by Tony Leung. He was a Chinese warlord who started out around 1,000 years ago, and he was able to get his hands on the titular 10 rings. Those rings are magical artifacts that he wears on his forearms, 5 on each. And he mostly uses them in combat. They grant him like superpowers, but they also mean he doesn't age at all while he's wearing it, as long as he's wearing them. So throughout centuries, he's this guy that stays the same age, and he's able to amass power and wealth through this secret organization called Ten Rings. Eventually, though, he falls in love somewhere in the late 1980s. He marries and has children, which pushes him to put the rings away, lock them in a box, and settle down. We then flash forward to present day, and we meet Sean, a young guy living in San Francisco, working a dead-end job as a car valet at a hotel. He loves hanging out with his best friend Katie, played by Awkwafina, drinking, singing karaoke, not really worrying about the future, until one day he's attacked by thugs, or actually assassins, and surprisingly he's able to defend himself quite amazingly well. He reveals then to Katie that his real name is Shang-Chi, and he is the son of Wen Wu and has been on the run in hiding for basically half his life. Now his father has finally found him for whatever reason, which will bring the two of them to a head-on conflict. That's as much as I'm saying, don't want to spoil too much. This is basically like the first 15 minutes of the film at most. Here's what made me fall in love with the movie. First of all, Tony Leung as Wen Wu. If you don't know this, Tony is a super high caliber actor known in Hong Kong and in China for his amazing body of work starting all the way back in the 1980s. He's been in classic films such as In the Mood for Love or Infernal Affairs, amongst many others. And in the East, he's basically considered a titan of cinema. To compare him to someone from the Western world, this would be like having Robert De Niro in the MCU. And his renown, Tony's renown, has to do not only with the quality of his movies, but even more so with the craft of his individual acting. He's known for being able to convey a whole wealth of emotions without saying a single word, with just his eyes and his face. And that's exactly what he's doing in this film. To be fair, the writing for Wen Wu is a very solid foundation upon which he builds, but he is the one that brings this character to life. And man, what a character it is. He's a villain, and we can see he's narcissistic and sociopathic. He did a lot of terrible stuff in the past and now again in the present. But he also has a family, which he clearly loves, and through that family his humanity shines through. And then again, when you examine his treatment of children, even though, coming from a place of love, it is revealed to have been questionable. He certainly wasn't a good father by any stretch, even though he himself would probably believe that he was. All of that, coupled with the grief and sorrow for his late wife, make him a really compelling, interesting and layered character, and he immediately goes to the top echelon of Marvel's villains. For me, he's up there with Thanos and Zemo as one of the best antagonists thus far. There is one scene in the opening flashback where Wen Wu first meets his future wife, and they have this beautifully choreographed fight in the forest, which looks like something taken straight out of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or House of the Flying Daggers, or Hero. It's a fight that looks like a dance, and in it we see all the emotions changing on the face of Wen Wu, and we realize exactly what he's thinking at any given moment, without any need for dialogue. There are several moments like this in the film, and I think they work mainly because Tony Leung is just such a powerful screen presence. He is really magnetic. Speaking of the fights, the one thing I did hope before the movie came out was that it would deliver on the kung fu fights. I wanted the choreography to be good and the fights to be shot in a clear way without thousands of cuts every minute to mask the fact that the stunts are not so great. And the movie delivers. Pretty much every single action sequence is a treat for the eyes. They are exciting, well made, fantastically shot. A lot of that is shot in longer takes, unbroken takes, where we really see that these people are really doing all this stuff, which means it's all the more impressive. And again, going back to the dance-like sequence from the beginning of the film, the dance motive is repeated several more times in the film, each time building upon that first one and adding some new elements, which then means that pretty much, maybe not all of them, but a lot of the fights in the film could also be read as dialogue as well. Like the people are talking through hand-to-hand fighting. It's brilliant stuff, really. And also pretty much each of the action sequences is very distinct. It has a really specific setting, color, lighting, time of day, which makes them stand out from one another. It isn't like they blend into each other. You think it was all the same. No. Every single action scene is different, is memorable. Also, the sense of scale grows amazingly with these fight sequences. The stakes go steadily up, and at one point towards the end, I realized, let's just take stock of it. We started this film with a fist fight on a San Francisco bus, and now we're here and this is happening? And of course, I won't say exactly what, but the scale does go up quickly, and the climax is almost unbelievable in terms of how huge it gets compared to the beginning. That progression of scale, as well as the distinct styles of action scenes, are accentuated by the cinematography, which is pretty damn beautiful. The use of color, the way the movie taps into the traditional Chinese aesthetics as time goes on, the way it uses folklore and legends from the East to create its world. It's very colorful and vibrant and quite unique for the Western viewer as well. But then again, also never completely alien. Despite coming from a totally different culture, I was able to relate and engage with the story and the characters. Primarily, I think, because it keeps the family angle at its heart. It is about the relationship between a father and a son, a difficult relationship, but also another relationship between Wen Wu as this ambitious, violent man and his wife, the woman who was able to impress him, to challenge him, and to make him realize that he's capable of love. By keeping the story tethered to that central motive of family, I think it stays emotionally engaging. Two more things at the end. Music fits the story quite well as it merges modern dynamic songs at the beginning of the film with more traditional Chinese sound as the story goes on, correctly setting the tone for each of the passing scenes. And finally, humor. I'd say it's pretty similar to what Marvel has been up to so far, but there's one surprise character that I won't reveal who ends up stealing every scene they're in and being one of the funniest things I've seen in any movie recently, while also making perfect sense in the universe of why that person is suddenly there in this film. So all in all, fantastic movie on every level and a great lead role debut by Simu Liu, who I hope will be coming back in future Marvel projects. I know I'm eager to see more of this fantastic hand-to-hand combat shot in such gorgeous ways.